don't really know how to start this. I've told pieces of my story before, little fragments here and there to different people at different times, but I've never sat down and told the whole thing from beginning to end. And honestly, part of me is terrified to do it. Because when you tell the whole story, you can't hide anymore. You can't skip the ugly parts or pretend certain things didn't happen. You can't control the narrative or make yourself look better than you actually were. But I also know that if I don't tell it, if I don't speak it out loud and put it all out there, then maybe someone who needs to hear it never will. Maybe someone who's sitting where I was sitting, who's feeling what I was feeling, who's convinced that their life is too far gone to be redeemed. Maybe that person needs to hear that there's hope on the other side of hopelessness. So here I am, taking a deep breath, getting ready to share everything. My name is Emma, and this is my testimony. I grew up in a house that looked normal from the outside. We had a lawn that my dad mowed on Saturdays when he felt like it. We had a car in the driveway, sometimes two. We had a front door that locked and windows with curtains and all the things that are supposed to make a house a home. But what happened inside that house, behind those curtains, in those rooms that nobody else ever saw, that's where the real story begins. The story that shaped me. The story that broke me before I even knew what it meant to be whole. My earliest memories are not of being held or comforted or told that I was loved. My earliest memories are of silence. Cold, heavy silence. The kind that fills a room when no one wants to be there. The kind that presses down on you until you can barely breathe. The kind that makes a child feel like she's already done something wrong just by existing, just by taking up space, just by needing things that no one wanted to give her. My mother was distant. I don't know how else to describe her. She was physically present most of the time, moving through the house, cooking meals, doing laundry, going through the motions of what a mother is supposed to do. But emotionally, she was somewhere else entirely. Her eyes would look right through me like I wasn't even there, like I was a ghost haunting my own home. I used to stand in front of her and wave my hand just to see if she would notice. Sometimes she did. Most of the time she didn't. And when she did notice me, it was usually to tell me to be quiet, to go play somewhere else, to stop bothering her. I remember one time, I must have been 4 or 5 years old, I drew her a picture. I spent all morning on it, used every crayon in the box. Drew her with a big smile and me holding her hand, both of us standing under a bright yellow sun. I was so proud of it. I thought maybe, if I gave her something beautiful, she would finally see me, finally love me the way I needed to be loved. I walked up to her while she was watching television and held out the picture with both hands. My heart was beating so fast. She glanced at it for maybe half a second, said, "That's nice," and turned back to the screen. She never looked at it again. Later that night, I found it in the trash, crumpled up, thrown away like it meant nothing, like I meant nothing. And my father, well, he was barely around at all. He worked long hours at a job he never talked about, came home late smelling like cigarettes and exhaustion, and when he was home, he didn't want to be bothered. He would sit in his chair and read the newspaper or watch sports, and if I tried to talk to him, he would grunt and nod without really listening. If I tried to climb into his lap, he would shift uncomfortably until I got the message and climbed back down. I learned very quickly that asking for attention was a mistake, that needing things was inconvenient, that being small and quiet was the safest way to survive in that house. I think every child is born with this deep, primal need to be seen, to be known, to be wanted. We come into this world crying out for someone to hold us, to tell us we belong, to make us feel safe. And when that need goes unmet, when no one answers that cry, it doesn't just disappear. It doesn't heal on its own. It festers. It turns into something else, something darker. For me, it turned into a wound I didn't even know I was carrying. A wound that whispered to me every single day, telling me I wasn't enough, that I was too much, that I was the reason my parents seemed so unhappy, so disconnected, so unwilling to engage with their own child, that if I had just been different, better, quieter, smarter, prettier, more lovable, maybe things would have been different. Maybe they would have wanted me. By the time I was 7 or 8, I had already learned how to perform. I figured out that if I smiled enough, if I was helpful enough, if I made myself useful and agreeable and easy to be around, people would tolerate me, not love me, tolerate me. There's a difference. I told myself that was enough. I told myself I didn't need more than that. But deep down, in that place I never let anyone see, not even myself, I was starving. Absolutely starving for someone to look at me and say, "You matter. You belong. I'm glad you're here." No one ever said those words, not once. Not in my entire childhood. School was hard. Not academically. I was smart enough. Good grades. Teachers liked me because I was quiet and compliant and never caused trouble. But socially, I never quite fit in. I was the kid on the edges, the one who laughed too loud when she was nervous, the one who tried too hard to make jokes that weren't funny, the one who hovered around groups hoping to be invited in, but never quite making it. I was the girl who sat alone at lunch and pretended to be reading a book so no one would notice that she didn't have anyone to sit with. The girl who walked slowly between classes hoping someone would fall into step beside her. The girl who went home every day and cried in her room because she felt invisible, unwanted, like a burden that everyone was just tolerating until they could get away. And kids can smell desperation, you know? They can sense when someone is performing, when someone is trying too hard, when someone needs them a little too much. So I was never really part of any group. I floated around, attaching myself to whoever would have me, then moving on when they inevitably got tired of me or found someone more interesting or just forgot I existed. I told myself I was independent, that I didn't need anyone, that I was strong. But that was a lie I told myself to survive. The truth was, I needed everyone. I was desperate for connection, for belonging, for any indication that I mattered to anyone at all. I just didn't know how to let them in, because I was terrified that if they really knew me, they would leave too. When I hit my teenage years, everything got worse. My body changed in ways I didn't understand and wasn't prepared for. My emotions became this wild, unpredictable thing I couldn't control. One minute, I was fine. The next, I was sobbing in my room for no reason I could name. I started having these dark thoughts. Thoughts about not wanting to exist. Thoughts about how much easier it would be if I just disappeared. I didn't tell anyone. Who would I tell? My parents didn't want to hear it. My friends, such as they were, had their own problems. So I held it all inside, let it eat away at me, became an expert at wearing a mask that showed the world everything was fine, when inside I was falling apart. And then the boys started noticing me. Not in a sweet, innocent way, in a way that made me feel powerful and terrified at the same time. Suddenly, my body, this thing I had always felt awkward and uncomfortable in, was getting attention. Eyes followed me down hallways. Older boys called out comments that made me blush, and something inside me, something desperate and broken, thought, maybe this is it. Maybe this is how I'll finally matter to someone. I remember the first time a boy told me I was beautiful. I was 14. He was 16. We were at a party, the kind of party I wasn't supposed to be at, and he found me standing alone by the drinks. He walked over, looked me up and down in a way that made my skin prickle, and said, "You're the prettiest girl here." And the way he looked at me, like I was something valuable, something worth wanting, it was like I finally existed, like I finally mattered to someone in the whole wide world. I didn't know then that what he saw wasn't me. He didn't see my thoughts, or my fears, or my dreams, or my heart. He saw what he wanted. A body, a pretty face, a girl who was young and naive and desperate enough to believe anything as long as it came wrapped in the promise of attention. I lost my virginity at 15. I'm not proud of that. I'm not sharing it to shock anyone or to make some kind of statement about teenagers or sex or anything like that. I'm sharing it because it's the truth. And the truth is what sets us free. That's what I've learned. We can't be healed from things we refuse to acknowledge. We can't be delivered from chains we pretend don't exist. So yes, 15 years old, I thought that if I gave him what he wanted, he would stay. He would love me. He would fill that aching hole inside me that I couldn't seem to fill on my own. I thought that sex was the price of admission for being loved. No one had ever told me any different, but he didn't stay. He got what he wanted and moved on to the next girl within a week, and I was left feeling emptier than before, more broken, more convinced that I had nothing of value except my body, that my only worth was in what I could give away. And even that, apparently, wasn't enough to make someone stay. That pattern repeated itself over and over again throughout high school. I would meet a boy. I would convince myself he was different, that this time it would be real, that this time he actually cared about me. I would give him everything, body and heart and soul, hoping it would be enough to make him stay, and every single time, he would leave. Every single time, I would be left picking up the pieces of a heart that was already shattered before I even knew what wholeness looked like. Every single time, I would tell myself it was my fault, that I wasn't pretty enough, sexy enough, interesting enough, good enough, that I was fundamentally unlovable, and the proof was in the wreckage of every relationship I had ever had. By the time I graduated high school, I was a wreck. I had learned to hide it well. Years of practice. I could smile and laugh and make people think I had it all together. I was good at performing, remember? Good at being whoever I needed to be to get through the day. But inside, I was dying. I hated myself with a passion that scared me. I hated my body even though I used it to try to win love. I hated the choices I had made. I hated the fact that no matter how hard I tried, no matter how much I gave, it was never enough. I wasn't enough, and I was starting to believe I never would be. I started drinking at 16, just at parties at first, just to take the edge off, just to feel less awkward, less anxious, less like the broken girl I knew I was underneath the mask. With a couple drinks in me, I could dance without feeling self-conscious. I could talk to people without worrying that I was saying the wrong thing. I could laugh without that tight knot of fear in my stomach. Alcohol became my liquid courage, my social lubricant, my best friend. But alcohol has a way of becoming a crutch. It has a way of making you think you need it to survive. The drinks at parties became drinks before parties to get warmed up. Then drinks at home when I was alone, just to relax, just to unwind, just to quiet the voices in my head that kept telling me how worthless I was. By 18, I was drinking almost every weekend. By 20, I was drinking several nights a week. And by 22, I couldn't imagine going to a social event without being at least a little bit drunk. I couldn't imagine facing my own thoughts without the numbing comfort of alcohol. The drugs came later, but they came. I was 20 years old when I first tried cocaine. A friend, and I use that term loosely, offered it to me at a party. I was already drunk, already feeling low, already hating myself for reasons I couldn't articulate, and she held out this little bag of white powder like it was the answer to all my problems. "Try it," she said. "It'll make you feel amazing." And I thought, why not? What did I have to lose? I had already lost everything that mattered. My innocence, my self-respect, any hope of being the person I had once dreamed I could be when I was a little girl drawing pictures for a mother who would never see them. So I said yes. I put that straw to my nose and I inhaled, and my life was never the same. That first high, it was like nothing I'd ever experienced. It was like someone had reached inside my chest and pulled out all the pain, all the shame, all the self-hatred, and replaced it with pure energy, pure confidence, pure joy. For a few brief hours, I felt invincible. I felt beautiful. I felt like I could do anything, be anything, conquer the world. I felt like none of the bad things mattered anymore. Like I could finally breathe after spending my whole life holding my breath. But that's the thing about drugs. They lie to you. They promise you freedom and deliver you into a prison. They promise you escape and trap you in a cycle you can't break. They promise you life, and slowly, steadily, surely, they kill you. I didn't become addicted overnight. It was gradual. A bump here, a line there. Always telling myself I could stop whenever I wanted. Always telling myself I was in control. Always telling myself this was recreational, that I wasn't like those addicts you see in movies, that I was fine. I was fine. I was fine. But I wasn't fine. I was spiraling. I just couldn't see it yet. Or maybe I could see it, but I was too scared to admit it. Because admitting it would mean I had a problem. And admitting I had a problem would mean I needed to change. And changing felt impossible when the drugs were the only thing making life feel bearable. My early 20s are a blur of nightclubs and after parties, and waking up in places I didn't recognize next to people whose names I couldn't remember. I was living for the weekend. Monday through Thursday, I would drag myself through whatever job I happened to have at the time, counting down the hours until Friday night when I could lose myself again. And then Friday would come and I would drink and do drugs and dance until the sun came up. And then I would sleep through Saturday and start all over again Saturday night. It was a cycle, a hamster wheel, an endless loop of temporary escape followed by crushing emptiness, followed by the desperate need to escape again. I had a few jobs during those years, but nothing stuck. I would show up late because I was too hungover to get out of bed on time. I would call in sick because I hadn't slept for 2 days straight. I would make mistakes because my brain was foggy and I couldn't concentrate. Eventually, I would get fired, or I would just stop going, ghosting employers, the same way I ghosted friends and family and anyone else who tried to get too close. I moved from apartment to apartment, always one step ahead of eviction notices and utility shutoffs, always running from something I couldn't name. I had relationships too, if you can call them that. Men who wanted what all the others had wanted. Men who saw my brokenness and exploited it. Men who whispered sweet words in my ear at 2 a.m. and then disappeared when the sun came up. Men who told me I was special while they were using me, then acted like they didn't know my name when they were done. I stopped expecting anything different. I stopped hoping for anything more. I told myself this was just how life worked, that love was a fairy tale for people who hadn't been hurt yet, for people who were whole and innocent and worthy of something real. That the best I could hope for was moments of pleasure in between the pain. Small hits of connection in between the crushing loneliness. I was 24 when I hit what I thought was rock bottom. I had just ended another toxic relationship with a man who cheated on me and didn't even care enough to lie about it. I had lost another job. I was behind on rent, months behind, and my landlord was threatening to evict me. I was running out of money, running out of options, running out of excuses. I remember sitting on the floor of my apartment one night, surrounded by empty bottles and dirty clothes and the debris of my chaotic life, and just sobbing. Sobbing until I couldn't breathe. Sobbing until there was nothing left inside me but this hollow, aching void that no amount of drugs or alcohol or sex or anything else could fill. And in that moment, sitting on that dirty floor, I thought about ending it all. I thought about how tired I was of fighting a battle I knew I couldn't win. I thought about how everyone would probably be better off without me, how I was just a burden, just a disappointment, just a waste of space. I thought about how much easier it would be to just stop existing, to close my eyes and never open them again. I didn't do it. Obviously, I'm here telling you this story, but I came close. Closer than anyone knew. Closer than I had ever admitted to myself until right now. And the only reason I didn't was because I was too scared, too much of a coward to follow through. So I did what I always did when things got hard. I picked myself up. I wiped my tears. I pushed the thoughts down deep where I wouldn't have to look at them. And I went out to a club that night and drank until I couldn't feel anything anymore. And the cycle continued. The night everything changed started like any other night. It was a Saturday. I had been drinking since the afternoon, pre-gaming with some people I barely knew in someone's apartment, before heading out to this club downtown. By the time we got there, I was already pretty far gone, slurring my words, stumbling in my heels, laughing too loud at things that weren't funny. I thought I was having a great time. I thought this was what happiness looked like. Inside the club, it was loud and dark and packed with bodies. The bass thumped through my chest. The lights flashed. I danced with strangers and took shots someone handed me and felt like I was flying even though I was falling. At some point, I got separated from the group I came with. That happened a lot. I would wander off, get distracted, end up somewhere I hadn't intended to be. This time, I ended up outside, in the alley behind the club, having a screaming match with some guy I had never met before. I don't even remember how it started. Something stupid, like most fights are. I think I bumped into him and spilled his drink. Or maybe he said something rude to me. Or maybe I said something rude to him. The details are fuzzy. All I know is that 1 minute we were exchanging words, heated words, angry words, and the next minute we were full on yelling at each other. His face red with anger, my voice getting higher and shriller with every sentence. My makeup smudged from sweat and tears, my hands shaking from adrenaline and too many drugs. Security had already told us to leave or they'd call the cops. People were staring, taking out their phones, probably hoping to catch something viral for social media. It was a mess. I was a mess, and I was too drunk and too high to care. And then he showed up. Daniel. I didn't know his name then. I didn't know anything about him. All I knew was that suddenly there was this man stepping between me and the guy I was fighting with, and he was calm. So incredibly calm. While everyone else was chaotic and loud and messy, he was steady, like the eye of a hurricane, like a rock in the middle of a raging river. He spoke to the guy first, the one I had been screaming at. His voice was low and firm, but not aggressive, not confrontational, just steady. Hey man, it's not worth it. She's drunk. You're upset. Let's all just cool down. Why don't you go back inside and get another drink? I'll make sure she gets home safe. The guy hesitated, looked like he wanted to argue, but something about Daniel's presence, his calm authority, made him think better of it. He muttered something under his breath, shot me one last dirty look, and walked away. Then Daniel turned to me. I expected him to lecture me, to tell me I was acting like a fool, which I was, to shake his head and walk away like everyone else always did when I showed them who I really was. I was already preparing my defenses, getting ready to be dismissive and sarcastic, ready to pretend. I didn't care what some random guy thought of me. But he didn't do any of that. He just looked at me, really looked at me. Not at my smudge makeup or my messy hair or the embarrassing scene I had just caused. He looked at me like he was seeing past all of that to something underneath, something I had spent years trying to hide. You okay? He asked. 2 words. That's all it was. But the way he said it, with such genuine concern, such simple kindness, it broke something inside me. My defenses crumbled. I felt tears prick my eyes, and I hated myself for it. I hated being this weak, emotional disaster in front of a stranger. But I couldn't stop it. Something about him, about the way he was looking at me, made it impossible to keep up the act. I'm fine, I lied. The same lie I had been telling my whole life. The same lie that had become so automatic I almost believed it myself. He nodded, but I could tell he didn't believe me. There was something in his eyes, something knowing but not judgmental, that made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in years. maybe ever. "Look," he said, "it's late. You've been drinking. This isn't a safe place for you to be right now. This area can get rough. Let me help you get home." I laughed. Bitter, defensive laughter, the armor going back up. "I don't need your help. I can take care of myself." "I know," he said simply, "but I'd feel better if I knew you got home safe." There was something about the way he said it. No judgment, no ulterior motive that I could detect. Just genuine concern for a stranger he had no reason to care about. And I was so unused to that, so completely unfamiliar with someone caring about my well-being without wanting something in return, that I didn't know how to respond. My usual script didn't have lines for this scene. He called me a cab, stood with me on the curb making small talk about nothing in particular, until it arrived. When the car pulled up, he opened the door for me, like I was someone worth treating gently, like I was a person deserving of kindness, not a drunk mess who had just been screaming in an alley. Before I got in, he handed me a $20 bill to cover the fare. "Take care of yourself," he said, and then he walked back toward the club, where I later learned his younger brother was waiting, the same guy I had been arguing with, though I didn't put that together until later. I cried the whole way home. Not because I was sad, although I was. Not because I was embarrassed, although I was that too. But because for the first time in years, someone had treated me like I mattered, like I was worth protecting, like I deserved kindness simply because I was a human being. Not because I had earned it or performed well enough to deserve it, and I didn't know what to do with that. It broke me open in a way I wasn't prepared for. I thought about him for days afterward. That stranger in the alley, his calm voice, his steady presence, the way he had looked at me without disgust or desire, just simple human kindness. I tried to push him out of my mind, tried to convince myself it didn't mean anything, that he was just some random guy being polite, that I was reading too much into it. But I couldn't stop thinking about him. Couldn't stop replaying that moment when he asked if I was okay and actually seemed to want to know the answer. 3 weeks later, I was at the supermarket, just a regular grocery run. I was tired and hungover and not in the mood to talk to anyone. I was shuffling through the aisles with my basket, grabbing the usual things: frozen meals, coffee, wine, the essentials for someone living the kind of life I was living. And then I saw him, standing in the produce section, picking out apples like it was the most important task in the world, examining each one, putting back the ones with bruises, taking his time like he had nowhere else to be. My heart stopped, literally stopped for a moment before it started pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I considered hiding, ducking down another aisle and pretending I hadn't seen him. I looked terrible, no makeup, hair in a messy bun, wearing sweatpants and an old hoodie, not exactly the impression I wanted to make. But before I could move, he looked up and our eyes met. Recognition flickered across his face. And then he smiled. Not a mocking smile or a knowing smile or the kind of smile guys usually gave me when they wanted something. Just a warm, genuine smile that made me feel like maybe the world wasn't as cold as I thought it was. He walked over to me, apple still in hand. "Hey," he said. "I remember you. From outside the club a few weeks back. How are you doing?" I wanted to lie, to say I was great, fine, living my best life, the usual script. But something about his openness, his sincerity, made it hard to keep my walls up. Maybe it was the fact that he had already seen me at my worst. What was the point of pretending now? "Honestly," I said, "not great, but I'm trying to get it together, trying to figure some things out." He nodded like that made perfect sense, like it was the most natural thing in the world to be honest with a stranger in the produce section of a supermarket. "That's good. Trying is the first step, more than a lot of people do." We stood there for a moment, an awkward silence hanging between us. I should have walked away, should have said goodbye and gone about my day, should have preserved my dignity, and not risk any more vulnerability. But I didn't want to. For reasons I couldn't explain, I wanted to stay in his presence just a little bit longer. There was something calming about him, something that made me feel safe. "I never thanked you," I said, "for that night, for helping me, for calling the cab, for not lecturing me or making me feel worse than I already did. So thank you. You don't have to thank me. I know, but I want to." I paused, gathering courage I didn't know I had. Courage that came from somewhere outside myself. "I'm Emma, by the way. I don't think we actually introduced ourselves." "Daniel." He extended his hand and I shook it. His grip was firm but gentle, like everything else about him. "Listen, Emma, I know this might sound strange, and feel free to say no. But I go to this church on Sundays. It's a good community, good people. People who actually care about each other. Not judgmental or anything like that. I think you might like it. Would you be interested in coming sometime?" Church. The word hit me like a punch to the gut. I hadn't been to church since I was a kid. Since my grandmother used to take me before she passed away when I was 9. I remembered the smell of her perfume, the feel of her hand holding mine, the sound of her voice singing hymns I couldn't remember the words to. Church was for good people, put together people, people who hadn't made the kind of mistakes I had made, not for wrecks like me. But Daniel was looking at me with those kind eyes, waiting, not pushing, just offering. And I found myself saying yes before my brain could catch up with my mouth. "Really?" He seemed genuinely surprised. Maybe pleased. "That's great. Here, let me give you my number. I'll text you the details." We exchanged numbers. He squeezed my arm gently before walking away with his bag of carefully selected apples. And I stood there in the middle of the supermarket, holding a basket full of frozen dinners and cheap wine, wondering what on earth I had just agreed to. That week was hard. I almost backed out a dozen times. Picked up my phone to text Daniel and tell him something came up. But every time I started typing, I thought about his face, his kindness, the way he had looked at me like I was worth something. And I put the phone down. Sunday morning arrived too quickly. I had no idea what to wear. What do you even wear to church? I hadn't thought about that. I must have changed outfits 5 times. Too dressy, too casual, too revealing, too frumpy. Eventually, I settled on jeans and a simple blouse. Nothing too flashy, nothing that screamed, "I'm a disaster trying to pretend I have it together." Although, that's exactly what I was. Daniel met me outside the church. It was a modest building, nothing fancy. No stained glass windows or towering spires like the churches in movies. Just a simple brick structure with a wooden cross above the door. There was something about it that felt welcoming, safe, like a haven in the middle of a storm. "You came," Daniel said, and the relief in his voice made me realize he had been worried I wouldn't show up. "I came," I confirmed. "Though I have no idea what I'm doing. I should warn you, I haven't been to church in like 15 years. I don't know any of the songs or the prayers or whatever." He laughed softly, a warm sound. "None of us know what we're doing. That's kind of the point." Inside, people greeted me warmly. Handshakes and hugs and smiles that seemed genuine, not the fake surface-level warmth I was used to in clubs and bars, where everyone was performing, everyone was competing, everyone was sizing each other up. This was different. Older women telling me how nice it was to meet me. A guy around my age offering to get me coffee. A family with little kids inviting me to sit with them. It was overwhelming in the best possible way. The service itself was unlike anything I expected. There was music, and people sang with their whole hearts, not perfectly, but passionately. Hands raised, eyes closed, voices blending together in a sound that was somehow beautiful, even though some of them couldn't carry a tune. The pastor spoke about grace, about how no one was too far gone, about how God's love wasn't something you had to earn because you could never earn it. It was a gift, freely given, freely received. I cried during that service. Silently, tears streaming down my face while Daniel sat beside me, not saying anything, just being there. A steady presence like he had been that night outside the club. And when it was over, when people were milling around and chatting and making plans for lunch, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Fragile, tentative hope. Like maybe, just maybe, my story wasn't over yet. Like maybe there was a chapter I hadn't read yet, a future I couldn't see yet, a possibility I hadn't dared to imagine. Daniel invited me to come back the following Sunday. I did. And the Sunday after that. And the one after that. I started going to the midweek Bible study too. A small group of people who gathered at someone's house to read scripture and talk about life. At first, I mostly listened. I didn't know enough to contribute, didn't have the vocabulary or the background that everyone else seemed to have. I felt like I was back in school, the new kid who didn't understand the inside jokes. But they never made me feel stupid, never made me feel less than. They welcomed my questions, even the dumb ones. They were patient with my doubts, my skepticism, my confusion. When I admitted I wasn't sure I believed any of it, they didn't kick me out or lecture me. They just said they understood. That they had doubts sometimes too. That faith was a journey, not a destination. Daniel was always there, patient and steady and kind. He would sit next to me and explain things I didn't understand. Who the characters in the Bible were, what certain passages meant, why people raised their hands during worship. He never preached at me or made me feel judged for my past. When I finally opened up to him about some of the things I had done, the drinking, the drugs, the endless parade of men who had used me and left me, he didn't flinch. He didn't look at me differently. He just listened. Let me get it all out. And when I was done, when I had finally stopped talking and was sitting there feeling exposed and ashamed, he said something that changed everything. None of that defines you, Emma. That's your past. But it doesn't have to be your future. God doesn't look at you and see your mistakes. He looks at you and sees his daughter, someone worth dying for. I wanted to believe him. With everything in me, I wanted to believe that I could be different, that I could change, that the broken girl I had been for so long could become someone new, someone whole, someone worthy of love. Somewhere along the way, without me even noticing, my feelings for Daniel changed. It wasn't sudden. It was gradual, like the sun rising so slowly, you don't notice it's happening until suddenly it's daylight. I started looking forward to seeing him, started thinking about him when we were apart, started noticing the way he laughed, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled, the way he made me feel safe in a world that had always felt so dangerous, the way he treated everyone with respect and kindness, not just me, the way he lived out his faith without being preachy or judgmental. But I was terrified to act on it. Terrified that I would ruin the friendship we had built. Terrified that if I let him know how I felt, he would reject me. Terrified that he would see me the way all those other men had seen me, as someone to use and discard. Or worse, that he would be disappointed in me, that my feelings would make him uncomfortable, that I would lose the one good thing in my life. One evening, after Bible study, we were sitting on the porch of the house where the group met. Everyone else had gone home, but Daniel and I lingered, talking about nothing and everything. The stars were coming out, the air was cool. It felt like a perfect moment, the kind you want to freeze and live in forever. The conversation drifted to relationships, and I asked him, trying to sound casual, why he was single. A guy like him, kind and handsome and good, surely he had women lining up. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he told me about his past. I wasn't always like this, he said. When I was younger, 18, 19, I made a lot of mistakes. Bad mistakes. I slept around, used women, didn't care about anyone but myself. I thought that was what being a man looked like. That was what my friends were doing, what society told me was normal. And it hurt people. It hurt me. I was empty and miserable, and I didn't understand why. I had everything I was supposed to want, but I felt like I was dying inside. He paused, staring out at the darkening sky. When I was 21, I had this relationship that ended really badly. She got hurt. I got hurt. It was a mess. And in the aftermath, I had this moment of clarity. I realized that the way I had been living, it was destroying me, destroying my soul, so I made a promise to God. A vow. No more sex outside of marriage. I wanted to honor him, and I wanted to honor whoever I would eventually marry. I wanted to give her something that was worth giving. He looked at me then, his eyes serious. I've kept that promise for 8 years now. It hasn't always been easy. There have been moments when I wanted to give up. But I believe it's the right thing, the way God intended things to be. I didn't know what to say. 8 years. I couldn't imagine that kind of discipline, that kind of commitment, that kind of integrity. It made me feel small, ashamed of my own history, aware of how far I was from that level of faith and self-control. I'm telling you this, Daniel continued, because I want to be honest with you, Emma. I care about you. A lot. And I think you know that. I think you've known for a while. I think there's something between us that's more than friendship. But if we're going to move forward, if this is going to become something more, I need you to understand where I stand. I need you to know my boundaries. I want to do this right, the way God intended. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear myself think. He cared about me. He wanted something more. It wasn't just me. It wasn't one-sided. But he also wanted boundaries, lines I wasn't used to having, lines I wasn't sure I could respect. I understand, I said, even though I wasn't sure I did. We started dating, or courting, as Daniel called it. It was different from anything I had ever experienced. He held my hand, and it felt more intimate than anything I had done with any other man. He kissed me gently, chastely, and it made my heart race more than any drunken hookup ever had. He told me I was beautiful and precious and worth waiting for. And for a little while, that was enough. But old habits die hard. The longer we were together, the more I struggled. Not because Daniel was doing anything wrong. He was doing everything right. That was the problem. He treated me with so much respect, so much honor, that I didn't know how to receive it. My whole life, my whole understanding of relationships was based on a lie. I had been taught through years of painful experience that love and sex were the same thing. That if a man didn't want my body, he didn't really want me. That physical intimacy was the only intimacy that mattered. And even though my head knew that wasn't true, even though I was reading the Bible and going to church and learning a different way of thinking, my heart couldn't quite catch up. Deep down, in those wounded places I hadn't fully healed yet, I still believed the lie. I still felt rejected every time Daniel pulled back. Still felt unworthy every time he said, "Not yet." Still heard those old voices whispering that I wasn't enough. That he didn't really want me, that if he loved me, he would show me the way those other men had shown me. The temptation started small. A glass of wine with dinner to take the edge off. Then 2 glasses, then a bottle. I told myself it was no big deal, that I could handle it, that I was stronger now, different, changed. But addiction doesn't care how strong you think you are. It doesn't care how much you've prayed or how many Bible verses you've memorized. It finds the cracks and seeps through. 5 weeks. That's how long I managed to stay completely sober before I slipped. An old friend texted me, someone from my before life, and invited me to a party. Just one night, I told myself. Just to blow off some steam. Just to feel like my old self for a few hours. I wouldn't drink too much. I wouldn't do any drugs. I would just go, have a good time, and come back to my new life. I think you can probably guess how that went. One night turned into every weekend. The drinking came back first, then the drugs. Cocaine again. Pills when I could get them. I was spiraling, and I could feel it, but I couldn't stop. Or wouldn't stop. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between can't and won't when you're in the middle of it. I started missing church, making excuses, telling Daniel I was sick or had to work or was just too tired. He noticed, of course. He noticed everything. He asked me what was wrong, his voice full of concern, and I lied to his face. Told him I was fine, just going through a rough patch, just needed some space. He wanted to help, wanted to be there for me, but I pushed him away. I couldn't let him see what I was becoming. Couldn't let him know that the girl he thought was changing was actually falling apart. The shame was unbearable. I felt like a fraud, a hypocrite. I had stood in that church and raised my hands and sang songs about redemption, and the whole time I was lying. The whole time I was still the same broken, worthless girl I had always been. I didn't deserve Daniel's love. I didn't deserve God's grace. I didn't deserve anything good, so I did what I always did when things got hard, when I felt too much, when the shame and the guilt and the self-hatred became too heavy to carry. I ran. I stopped answering Daniel's calls, stopped responding to his texts, stopped going to church, stopped going to Bible study. I cut myself off from everyone who had shown me kindness, everyone who had offered me hope because I was convinced I would only disappoint them. Better to leave before they left me. Better to push them away before they saw the real me and walked away on their own. That's what I told myself. That's what I believed. For weeks, I spiraled deeper and deeper into darkness. The drugs got heavier. The drinking got worse. I stopped eating properly, stopped sleeping, stopped caring about anything except the next high, the next escape, the next moment of oblivion where I didn't have to feel how broken I was. I was slowly killing myself, and I knew it, and I didn't care. Part of me thought maybe that was the point. Maybe that was the only way out of the mess I had made of my life. And then came the night. I was alone in my apartment. I'd been partying for days straight, barely sleeping, barely eating, mixing things I shouldn't have been mixing. Cocaine and pills and alcohol, a cocktail designed to destroy. I remember feeling invincible at first, like I always did at the beginning of a high, like I was on top of the world. Then the room started spinning. My heart was racing, pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat, in my head, everywhere. My skin felt like it was on fire and freezing at the same time. Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. I tried to stand up and collapsed. My legs wouldn't hold me. I crawled to the couch and pulled myself onto it. I tried to reach for my phone, but my hands wouldn't work right. I couldn't make them do what I wanted them to do. I was lying on my couch, and I couldn't move, couldn't call for help, couldn't do anything except lie there and feel my body shutting down. My breathing got shallow. Each breath felt like it was barely enough. My vision blurred. The room started to go dark around the edges, and I realized, with a strange sense of detachment, almost like I was watching myself from somewhere far away, that I was dying. This was it. This was how my story ended. Alone, in a dirty apartment, surrounded by the evidence of all my worst choices. That's when I saw it. Or him. I don't know how to describe it without sounding crazy. The darkness around me, the darkness that had been closing in, suddenly gave way to light. Not the harsh light of a hospital, or the artificial light of a lamp, or anything I had ever seen before. Something different. Something warm and alive and more real than anything I had ever experienced in my entire life. And in that light, I felt a presence so powerful and so gentle that it made me weep. I felt known, completely known. Every shameful thing I had ever done, every lie I had ever told, every way I had ever hurt myself and others, it was all visible. Nothing was hidden. And instead of condemnation, Instead of the judgment I deserved, I felt love. A love so complete and unconditional that it shattered every lie I had ever believed about myself. A love that said, "You're mine. You have always been mine, and I am not letting you go." I heard my name, not with my ears, but somewhere deeper, in my soul, in the very core of who I was. Emma. Spoken with a tenderness I didn't know existed, a tenderness that broke me and healed me at the same time. I knew, in that moment, that I was in the presence of Jesus. Don't ask me how I knew. I didn't see a face or a figure, but I knew. It was him, and he was showing me that I was seen, known, loved, not because of anything I had done or could ever do, but simply because he had made me and chosen me and died for me. I wanted to stay there forever, in that light, in that love, in that presence that felt more like home than anywhere I had ever been. But I felt myself being pulled back into my body, back into the darkness of my apartment, back into life. At the same time, miles away, Daniel was having a dream. He told me about it later, when I was strong enough to hear it. He said he woke up in the middle of the night, his heart pounding, gasping for breath. He had seen me lying on a couch, not moving, barely alive, surrounded by bottles and powder and evidence of destruction. He said the dream was so vivid, so real, that he knew it wasn't just a dream. He knew it was from God, a warning, a call to action. He didn't hesitate, didn't wait until morning, didn't stop to question whether he was being crazy. He jumped out of bed, threw on clothes, and drove to my apartment. He banged on the door until a neighbor came out to see what the commotion was, explained that he thought I was in danger. The neighbor let him into the building. He pounded on my door, called my name, and when I didn't answer, when he heard nothing but silence from inside, he broke down the door. He found me exactly as he had seen in his dream, unconscious on the couch, barely breathing. My lips were blue, my skin was cold. He thought I was dead. He told me later that he had never been so scared in his entire life, that in that moment, he understood what true fear felt like. He carried me to his car, drove me to the hospital, prayed out loud the whole way, his voice breaking, tears streaming down his face. "God, don't let her die. Please. Not like this. I know you're not done with her. I know there's more to her story. Please, God. Please." He stayed with me all night, didn't leave my side, just sat there praying, waiting, believing when I had no belief left. I woke up slowly. First there was sound, the beeping of machines. Then there was light, too bright, hurting my eyes. Then there was pain, my body aching everywhere, my head throbbing. And then I saw him, Daniel, sitting beside my hospital bed, his eyes red and swollen, his clothes wrinkled. He hadn't slept, hadn't left the room, just sat there, keeping vigil, refusing to give up on me. When he saw that I was awake, he broke down completely, started sobbing, not quiet tears, but full, body-shaking sobs. "You're alive," he kept saying. Thank God you're alive." I don't have words for what I felt in that moment. Lying in that hospital bed, tubes in my arms, machines beeping around me, looking at this man who had dropped everything to save me, who had never given up on me even when I had given up on myself, who had broken down my door and carried me to his car and prayed for my life. The weight of it, the enormity of what he had done, was almost too much to bear. I started crying, ugly heaving sobs that hurt my chest. All the pain I had been holding for so long, all the shame, all the self-hatred, all the years of believing I was worthless and unlovable, it came pouring out, like a dam breaking, like a wound finally being lanced. "I'm so sorry," I kept saying. "I'm so sorry. I messed everything up. I ruined everything. I'm such a disaster. I don't know why you're here. I don't know why you care. You should just leave. Everyone else does." "No," he said firmly, taking my hand. "I'm not going anywhere. You didn't ruin anything. You're here. You're alive. That's all that matters. We'll figure out the rest." He stayed with me for days while I recovered, physically. And during that time, while my body healed, something was happening in my soul. The experience I had during the overdose, that moment in the light, it wouldn't leave me. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Couldn't stop feeling the echo of that presence, that love. It was like I had touched something real, something eternal. And now nothing else felt as real by comparison. Everything else felt like shadows. That light, that love, was the only solid thing. One night, when Daniel had stepped out to get food, I was alone in my hospital room. Alone with my thoughts. Alone with God, if he was really there. And I did something I hadn't done sincerely in my entire life. Something I had tried before, but never really meant. I prayed. "Jesus," I whispered into the quiet of that room, "if that was really you, if what I felt was real, if you actually reached down and showed me yourself while I was dying, then I'm done. I'm done running. I'm done pretending I can fix myself. I've tried to do it on my own and I can't. I keep messing up. I keep making the same mistakes. I keep destroying myself. But if you want me, if you actually want someone as broken and messed up and far gone as me, then I'm yours. All of me. Whatever's left, I give up. I surrender. Please help me." It wasn't a pretty prayer. There were no fancy words, no religious formulas, no thee and thou, just raw, desperate honesty from a girl who had finally hit the end of herself, who had finally stopped fighting and started surrendering. And in the silence of that hospital room, I felt peace. Not the absence of problems or the guarantee that everything would be easy, just peace, a quiet assurance that I was not alone anymore, that I was held, that whatever came next, I wouldn't have to face it by myself. When Daniel came back, I told him what I had done, what I had decided. He started crying again, happy tears this time, mixing with the exhaustion and relief on his face. He told me he had been praying for this moment since he first met me outside that club, that he had seen something in me that night, something worth fighting for, a spark of life underneath all the brokenness, and he had never stopped believing that God would reach me. Getting out of the hospital was just the beginning. I wish I could tell you that everything was perfect after that I walked out of those doors, a new woman with no struggles and no setbacks and no desire to go back to my old ways. But that's not how healing works. That's not how any of this works. Healing is messy. It's 2 steps forward and 1 step back. It's good days and bad days and everything in between. I had to get help. Real, professional help. Addiction doesn't just disappear because you have a spiritual experience. The cravings don't magically go away. The patterns you've built over years don't dissolve overnight. I went to rehab, 30 days inpatient at a treatment center. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. Facing my demons without any chemical escape. Learning to sit with my pain instead of running from it. Learning to feel without falling apart. Learning coping mechanisms, triggers to avoid, ways to handle stress that didn't involve destroying myself. Daniel visited every chance he got. So did some people from the church. They didn't lecture me or tell me I should have been stronger. They just showed up, brought books and snacks, prayed with me, reminded me that I wasn't alone. When I got out, Daniel was there waiting for me. So was the church, the people I had ghosted, the community I had abandoned. They welcomed me back with open arms. No judgment. No, I told you so. No conditions on their love. Just grace upon grace upon grace. I went back to Bible study, went back to Sunday services, but this time it was different. Before, I had been going through the motions, trying to be someone I wasn't, trying to earn something I thought I had to work for. Now I went because I needed it. because those people were my family, because God was my father, and I wanted to know him more. I went because it was home. I got baptized 6 months after leaving the hospital. Standing in that water, with the whole congregation watching, I felt like I was finally becoming the person I was always meant to be. Not perfect, not put together, but new, washed clean, a daughter of the King. When I came up out of the water, I felt different, lighter, like something old had died and something new had been born. Daniel and I took things slow after that. We had to rebuild trust, had to learn how to be together in a healthy way, a way that honored both of us and honored God. There were hard conversations, tears, moments when I wondered if we would make it, moments when the shame of my past felt like too much to overcome. But we did. We made it. Because we both understood that our relationship wasn't just about us. It was about something bigger. A God who had brought two broken people together and was making something beautiful out of the wreckage. We got married a year and a half after I left the hospital. A simple ceremony in the church where I had found my faith, with our church family gathered around us. When Daniel said his vows, when he promised to love me and honor me and cherish me for the rest of our lives, I finally understood what love was supposed to feel like. Not desperate grasping, not empty performance, not trading your body for temporary attention. Real love, the kind that stays, the kind that sees you at your worst and chooses you anyway, the kind that reflects something divine. I'm telling you all this, sharing these details of my life that I've never shared with anyone except my husband and my closest friends, because I want you to know that whatever you're going through, it's not the end of your story. I was dead in that apartment. Not metaphorically, literally dead or so close to it that there was no difference. And God reached down and pulled me back. Not because I deserved it. Not because I had earned it. Simply because he loved me. Simply because he wasn't done with me yet. Simply because he is a God of second chances and third chances and 70 times 7 chances. If you're watching this and you're in a dark place, if you feel like no one sees you and no one cares, if you feel like you've messed up too badly and gone too far and done too much to ever be redeemed, I need you to hear this. You are seen. You are known. You are loved. Not by me, although I do love you, whoever you are, but by a God who created you on purpose, for a purpose. A God who knows every mistake you've made and loves you anyway. A God who is not waiting for you to clean yourself up before he accepts you. He wants you exactly as you are, broken and messy and imperfect. He wants to start from right where you are. I still have hard days. I still struggle sometimes with old voices that try to tell me I'm worthless, that my past defines me, that I'm just pretending to be someone I'm not. But I know now how to fight them. I know where my identity comes from. It doesn't come from what I've done or what's been done to me. It doesn't come from the mistakes of my past or the fears of my present. It comes from who I belong to, and I belong to Jesus. My life today looks nothing like my life 6 years ago. I have a husband who loves me like Christ loves the church. I have a community that holds me up when I can't stand on my own. I have purpose. I have peace. Real, solid, unshakable peace that doesn't make sense given everything I've been through. And I have hope. Not hope in my circumstances, which still aren't perfect. Not hope in myself because I know how weak I am, but hope in God, who took the worst parts of my story and used them for something beautiful, who never gave up on me, even when I gave up on myself, who reaches into the darkest places and brings out light. That's my testimony. That's my story. The whole ugly, beautiful, painful, redeemed story. And if any part of it resonated with you, if you found yourself in any of the things I said, if you heard your own story echoing in mine, I want to invite you to do what I did. Stop running. Stop trying to fix yourself. Stop trying to earn something that was always meant to be a gift. Come to Jesus just as you are, with all your mess and all your brokenness and all your shame. Let him do what only he can do. Let him make you new. It's not too late. It's never too late. Trust me. If God could reach me in that dark apartment while I was literally dying from my own choices, he can reach you too. Wherever you are, whatever you've done, his love is bigger, his grace is sufficient, and his arms are open wide, waiting for you to come home. Thank you for listening. Thank you for letting me share my story with you. I pray that something I said today plants a seed of hope in your heart, a seed that God will grow into something beautiful, because that's what he does. He takes our ashes and makes them into beauty. He takes our mourning and turns it into dancing. He takes broken girls like me and makes them whole again. To God be the glory, now and forever. Amen.